matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you
And we're recording live, Taylor. Can you believe it? You can't even tell I just woke up from a nap. I am so enthused.
I was not. Whoa, you are. I was not expecting that.
It's literally that was all my energy.
From 4 seconds ago when you were telling me how tired you were.
I'm done now. That was it.
That was very
That's
cheerful.
all I have in me. How are you doing?
I am good.
Good.
I am. Yeah, we did hopefully our last cookie booth, maybe our second to last, but we did run out of Thin Mints today, so that was good to be like, things are happening. It's nice.
Is that the goal? The goal is to run out of them?
Yeah.
What do the kids win again?
A bunch of junk. Like
Is it a
she gets
pyramid
like
scheme?
yes.
Okay.
No, because you're not like getting other girl people to do it, but you're getting like a bunch of crap. So you're getting like they get like, well, okay, actually. All right, let me introduce us since this is going to take me an hour to explain to you. Welcome to Doomed to Fail, where the podcast that brings you history's most notorious disasters and epic failures twice a week. I am Taylor, joined by Farz, and it is almost the end of Girl Scout cookie season. No, our boxes are $6. The troop gets like $1 a box, which is like not bad. And for like troop things to like pay for their activities and camp and stuff, that gets divided amongst the girls. And then each girl at every level, which is like every 100 boxes or so, you get like a piece of junk, like a water bottle or a stuffed panda this year. And if you sell like more than 875 boxes, you get to go to Knott's Berry Farm. And then if you sell 5,000 boxes, you get to go on a cruise to the Mediterranean. So it gets progressively better. But selling 5,000
anybody had
boxes
that?
is impossible. No one I've ever met.
Wow. Yeah. Have you done the Knott's Berry Farm thing?
We won it one year. We did. It was when they went to Universal. And we did get it once, but we're not going to get it this year, which is fine.
It reminds me a lot of Cutco. Remember Cutco?
Yeah.
Everybody's older brother worked there, and it was like you just sell to your friends and friends of friends, and
Yeah.
um,
But it's
they're
cute. They
good.
get out there. They're meeting their community with their friends, and yeah, it's very sweet.
And they're good. I have the box at the top of the box. It's open in the kitchen area, so that anytime if someone's over that they want to grab a cookie, they can pop them in a package and grab a cookie. It's like it's very hospitable of me
It is.
hosting
Look at
you.
you.
Yeah.
If you microwave the Adventurefuls, you can pretend that you baked them.
Oh, that's good. That's a great idea. If you have any more hacks, if you have cookie hacks, like you gotta tell us.
Yeah, well, that's one. And then the toast days are good with as s'mores, but it's very, very sweet. Not like you wouldn't expect them to be sweet, but it's like exceptionally sweet.
Not an everyday treat. Got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sweet. Well, let's get to story time. Unless there's anything else you have.
I did want to tell you, just I don't know why I felt like telling you this, but did you hear about the Illinois state flag?
No.
They had a redesign contest, so they had 10 um different options and people got to vote on them and they voted to keep their flag. Like they voted to not pick any of the redesigns and to pick the one they already had, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, good. Good.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like earlier this week, I was watching something about airplane designs and how
hmm
it was like there's a reason why they all look the same. Like people have tried to be creative with airplane designs, and it's
Right,
like
but like
they
don't do
fall out of the
that.
sky. Yeah, like when something works, just keep doing the thing that works.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um we the Morgan did send a thing about how flying is safe still. How do you feel after your flights?
Um,
Did you clap when the plane landed?
People were so the guy next to me,
hmm
he was an older gentleman, and he did do. We didn't talk. I don't know anything about him, but he did do the little prayer thing, the Father, the Son, and the
Spectacles,
Holy
testicles,
Spirit
wallet,
thing.
and watch. Yep.
Is that what it is? Yeah. Okay.
It's not really
That's your
that, but
version. Yeah, I was
I
gonna
can't
say I
remember
don't
I
think.
can't remember where that's from. But yes, Father,
Uh,
Son, Holy Spirit.
but he did do that. So I think that like the general sentiment is like people are like a little bit more anxious than normal,
Yeah.
especially because I was flying into Reagan and like that plane just crashed. For some reason, there's like something about like the ghost of the plane that was there. Like what I was thinking was at some point on this like descent trajectory, I'm like right where that plane was.
Exactly. That's scary. And it's so sad that there are so many ice. It's so like there's so many ice skaters on that plane, so I'm seeing a lot of like ice skating tributes to it. It's very sad.
Yeah, yeah. So, but Morgan, thank you for writing in to help clear up some anxiety.
Hmm. Cool.
Who is it? Me? Is it me today?
Yeah.
Okay, I will go first and continue my women's history thing that I
Ooh,
forgot I was doing last week when I covered
perfect.
Hachi.
No notes.
Thank Taylor for always keep me on track. So yeah, so the whole point of this women's history call out, there's a lot of like in my story, it's a lot of like unique women history actually that was going on here, but in like the worst possible way.
Hmm.
And we're going to be covering, again in the spirit of equality, like women can be just as horrible as men, and
Absolutely.
as a result, we're going to cover some of those horrible women. And last 2 weeks, I covered Elizabeth Bathory
Hmm.
and kind of touching on what you started this conversation with before we started recording, Taylor. I'm going to be covering Nazi Germany.
Ooh, mine's Nazi Germany too.
Interesting. Okay, so do you have any guess who I might cover?
Um, I know like all like the women that were in like the concentration camps, like the bitch of Buchenwald. What's her name? Her?
Elsa Cook.
Is that her, the bitch of Buchenwald?
That's the bitch of Buchenwald, but I
Hmm.
wrote down nope, exclamation point, wrong, exclamation point. It's not Elsa Cook,
Oh,
Taylor, exclamation point, ha 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 ha. But you didn't say Elsa Cook. I had to tell you, so it doesn't even count. So we'll just get past that. But I'm not covering Elsa Cook.
wow.
I know.
Wow.
I
Way to
really
come
threw it
at
in
me
your
in your
face.
notes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really, really threw it at you. But I'm gonna cover another person who would be called a crazy bitch. Who a lot of people didn't hear because I think that Elsa Cook kind of became super famous and everybody like kind of like put her at the very top. I mean,
Hmm.
she was the one that like would pick prisoners for execution based on tattoos that she thought would look good as like
As lamps.
nightshade as lamps.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
craziest
Fuck.
what like what
Yeah.
logic is that? Um and also timing wise, I realized that Ilsa Cook's story dovetails directly into Ed Gein. And so there's a lot of speculation when Ed
Ooh.
Gein popped off in the US, that he was inspired by Ilsa Cook, although we don't know for sure if he was or not. But he did a lot of the same stuff that Ilsa Cook did. And then he became like the most well known serial killer person in the US at that
Yeah.
time. So I think that's why we know her so well. But I'm going to cover someone different. I'm going to cover a woman named Irma Grese. Do you know that name?
No. I did read Hitler's Furies, but a long time ago.
Was she in there or something?
Probably. It's a book about like the women in the Third Reich. So,
Ah. Um, so again, like there's gonna be a lot of fun women's firsts here. So in addition to being one of the most sadistic women in history, she also holds a distinction as being the youngest woman Great Britain has ever executed.
oh,
Yeah.
that that's saying a lot.
Yeah.
They've executed a lot of young women.
So technically they say judicially executed. So I think that
Yep.
there's also a lot of women that were killed because the king was just like, I don't like you, so cut off your head. But this was like done through courts.
I saw a thing, it's like on Instagram, like comedians, and they were like Henry the Eighth's fifth bachelor party, and they had like T-shirts that were like fifth time's a charm, and they were like, "Dude, why are we here again? This is so embarrassing," and like it was just really funny.
Yeah, no gifts. No gifts after the second wedding,
Yeah,
unless you're king.
right,
Um,
right. Henry the
I
Eighth would kill you. So
yeah, yeah. I will admit, reading about her upbringing in life, I legitimately don't understand how people in Germany turned out the way they did. Like, you remember the opening scene in Inglorious Bastards with Christopher Waltz when he walks up to that farm?
hmm.
That's like kind of Irma's life. It's like these rolling hills, fresh milk, fresh cheese, like freshly
Oh,
baked bread. It's like
totally.
it just sounds like absolute paradise. That's like what she was brought up in.
Hmm.
Again, well, I guess I'll get into like why this ended up happening the way it did. But she was born in 1923, 5 years after World War One ended, and there were some people living this kind of like idyllic life in Germany at this time, but not everybody. Uh, it's funny because I was trying to figure out who said this, but it turns out to be another very famous woman, which like again dovetails into the whole theme of this. it was Ruth Bader Ginsburg quoting a quote that she said, saying that pendulum swings violently from one side of the spectrum to the other side of the spectrum,
Hmm.
and that's kind of what ended up happening in Germany around this time, obviously. So basically,
Uh-huh.
during this period, the world was super mad at Germany. So you had reparations, which financially devastated them while they were already financially devastated. You had these traumatized soldiers coming home who, due to what they experienced, were basically absolutely useless. You had a
Hmm.
blockade on food, and you had hyperinflation, which made the German mark totally worthless.
Hmm.
And we just like as a society just kept pushing these people further and further into the brink, which happened. Like,
Yeah. I was reading about it in the book for my thing this week, and yeah, like inflation was like Monday, a loaf of bread is 5 marks. On Thursday, it's 1 trillion marks.
yeah.
Like, what are you supposed to do? Like, everything's gone.
And I wonder, like, what did the Allied powers think would happen? Like, if you push, there's this quote that the most dangerous person in the world is the one who has nothing to lose. And
Mm,
I think of that too. I'm like, you push these people to the point of like, they can't feed their kids. They can't do, like, of course they're going to like, it's almost shocking that we didn't think a Hitler would happen.
yeah, no, that's a good question. I don't know what like the outcome of the Treaty of Versailles was expected to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of the situation we found ourselves here is that the Germans after World War One had basically nothing to lose. Irma would have been born the same year as the beer hall push, which was Hitler's first failed attempt in Munich at a coup, and that resulted in him getting sent to prison. Uh, the village she was born in, it's called Mecklenburg Seenplatte, which, like, if you look it up, it looks again
I mean,
absolutely idyllic,
you're totally right that like I mean, Germany is gorgeous. And like these
gorgeous.
these little towns and like the mountains, they're just like fairy tale beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, which like would make me the opposite of angry. I'd want to go talk to rabbits in the forest, like not take people's skins and make lamps out of them. You know, it's the opposite feeling it would give most people, I think.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think there's what is the what is the path between those two? You know?
So I'm gonna actually touch on that too because I do want to
Yeah.
discuss that. So Irma, back to Irma, she was one of five children, and her father worked at a dairy farm, and her mother was basically she was a housewife, but she also like grow. She had a garden. She grew their food, and she had like a mini farm, like think goats and chickens around. Like it
Hmm.
was again exactly the scenario that we're describing here. But despite the bucolic narrative I'm painting, these people also had their problems. And Irma's father was a philanderer, and he was having an affair with the daughter of a local pub owner. And Irma's mother found out and then attempted suicide. The suicide attempt failed in the moment, but caused enough damage given the fact that she drank hydrochloric acid, worst way to do it, that she would die months later after the attempt. And unfortunately for Irma, she's the one that found her mother's body. So I'm sure that imprints something in your brain around the
Yeah.
futility of life, you know?
Yeah. 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 It's not great. It's
Yeah.
pretty
She would have
awful.
been
Yeah.
12 years old at this time, which is like
Yeah.
pretty young to like see something like that. So there's some confusion as to the role of Irma's father in influencing her political ideology. On the one hand, it was said that he was not an ideologue or a fanatic, but rather just like he was basically a conservative guy at a time when being conservative meant you were part of the Nazi party.
Right.
On the other hand, by most accounts, he joined the party formally in 1937, which is 3 years after the Nazi party purged its ranks during the Night of
Hmm.
Long Knives and killed anybody who was disloyal to Hitler.
Hmm.
And it was 2 years after the Nuremberg laws go into effect, which stripped Jews of their German citizenship.
Hmm.
But again, I think in a lot of these situations, you're like, I don't know, this doesn't affect me, so who cares? Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, until it's like in your face.
Hmm.
Yeah, I also put down that like I don't know this guy's perspective, and he went through World War One, and his wife drinking hydrochloric acid. So like, who knows what he perceived as normal or not at
Right.
this. Irma and her father's adoption of Nazism occurred around the same time as right after her father officially joined the party. She would also join the League of German Girls, which was the girls' wing of the Hitler Youth Movement.
I wonder if
Wait,
they sold
didn't Hitler
cookies.
invent the Boy Scouts?
No.
Did he do something like that?
He
What
had the
was
Hitler Youth, but I don't think that he invented the Boy Scouts. It's the
okay?
same idea. Scouting movement founded in night. No.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
But it's like it does fall into the idea of
It
like
sounded very similar. That's why I was like, wait,
of
are
scouting,
these the
but no.
same? Okay.
It looks similar. I mean, they look similar,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, but no.
So to further add confusion on where her father stood on the matter, he actually hated the fact that his daughter joined the League of German Girls. He did not want her to be part of the Hitler Youth. So again, we're seeing some indications that he's not like a full blown Nazi, though he's an official
Hmm.
Nazi. But then again, like I think Arnold Schwarzenegger's dad was a Nazi, or like, he was a part of
He
the party.
he wasn't, you know what? I'm talking about Nazis as well in my story, and I think a lot of it is like it's interesting because you can't put an entire country in jail, after this war. So like a lot of people were Nazis and they never were accountable for it at all, But like Arnold Schwarzenegger, he had that thing. Did you see when he talked about his dad, how his dad came home and it was just like a bunch of broken men and they all became alcoholics and it was terrible, you know?
What do you mean after the
Like,
war?
mhm,
After World War II, you mean?
yeah. He
Uh,
said like a lot of the like my dad said, like I talked about this with my dad in the episode about polio. When my dad was little, all the dads would introduce themselves and be like, "Oh, hey, I'm da 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 da. Oh, what were you in the service?" Because everyone's dad had been in the war.
yeah,
And so that's got to be the same in Germany and Japan and Russia and these places that like, you know, y- everyone who's my age, who's in their 40s, their grandparents were in the war one way or another. If you're like fr from the US generations back, if you're in Germany, those generations back, like you can't, I don't know, like it was just part of the thing. So who knows if like Irma's dad was like go along to get along or
yeah,
like
yeah.
really into it. Like a lot of people, well, most people were never punished. They were just like not, you can't put everybody in jail.
It seems like it's like society just writing off like an entire generation and being like,
Yeah.
you guys just have to like, because that's like what it was saying about her as well, or her like after World War One was like I mentioned the soldiers coming home and being basically useless because like they were like traumatized or like
Yeah.
emotionally traumatized by everything that they had seen and gone through, and also being like the
Hmm.
bad guys, and so they come home and it's like nobody gives a shit about you, and you just like sit there and you're like, I guess I'm just gonna drink myself to death. Like, what else am I gonna
Yeah.
do?
And those are the dads of these guys, you know?
Damn, you're right.
So
I
like
didn't think about that.
many
Yeah, you're right.
generations of people,
That's like
like
trauma
you're
being passed generation to generation.
absolutely, absolutely, your dad was in the trenches in World War One. Now think you might have now everything's terrible, and then you have a chance at something better, so you become a Nazi.
It's funny. Like the more we talk about it, it's probably not a good thing. But the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, I kind of get it. Like, I kind
Well, no, and I think that it's not, it's interesting because if everyone's doing it and it's normalized, I don't
yeah.
know. But it wasn't a secret. Like the bad stuff wasn't a secret. So it's not like
I think the bad
people
stuff
didn't know.
was kind of a secret, though.
But not really. I have stuff in, well, I mean, people knew. Not everyone knew, but people knew.
Hmm.
You
Well,
know?
yeah, I think yeah. Well, let me circle back to Arma, and then we'll go back into the philosophy of Nazism.
Great.
So she would ultimately drop out of school at 14 years old to go to work. And first, she worked at a dairy farm. Then she would do retail, and then her life with the Nazi movement would be even more formally intertwined. She would land a job at a sanatorium that was operated by the Nazis to rehabilitate SS personnel. Her mentor there was a Nazi OG, someone with the rank of being in the party way in the early days, like one of the original Nazis, basically. He was a guy named Karl Gebhardt,
Hmm.
and we're not going to get into a ton of detail about Karl Gebhardt, but he was basically the equivalent of Joseph Mengele at like other concentration camps. So he was like the
Yeah.
chief doctor doing crazy stuff to people,
Hmm.
basically at the
I
other
feel like
camps.
that's such an interesting line to go back to it. Like you're like, yes, I want my economy to be better, but then like, oh, I'm watching them do these terrible human experiments, Like when does that get too weird for you to stay?
I
Or
don't
by
know.
then I'm just
I think if
scared.
it's like so embedded that you're so much better than everybody else that like I don't
Mm.
know. Does it? Why would it ever dawn on you?
I feel like, yeah, I don't know.
Um, and so this guy Gebhardt, this crazy guy, that was basically her mentor. Eventually, Irma was fired from her job at the sanatorium, but Gebhardt he referred her to Ravensbrück concentration camp to find work. So this is another first, which I didn't know about, and that ties into women's stuff. This was unique because it was a women's only concentration camp.
Hmm.
Well, at first it was women's only, but then apparently there were some women who were pregnant when they were put into the concentration camp, so it became a woman and children's concentration camp, which like makes it so much more grim.
I
Like
know.
you brought pregnant women into this, like it's crazy.
But of course
It
they did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're Nazis.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. So at 18 years old, Irma became a concentration camp officer in training for about 3 weeks, which she completed to the satisfaction of her supervisors. There's nothing known as to how or why during this time she like completely flipped the script from being like semi-normal to like completely and utterly sociopathic. But during the
Mhm.
7 months she spent working at Ravensbrück, she was known for whipping prisoners, particularly the ones that were like really old and really weak. Like she liked the fact that they couldn't defend themselves at all.
Mhm.
She was known to deny food to women who were like already severely malnourished and starving. She volunteered to select women to be sent for experimentation, which, if you recall from the Joseph Mengele episode of last podcast on the left, that was a job that nobody wanted. Even the people that did do it would show up drunk to do it.
Right. That's a big thing too. Like a lot of people were on
Hammered.
meth and drunk to be able to do these things because they were so bad. But a couple people, sounds like Irma's one of them, was like, cool.
Mengele was one of them too. Mengele
Yeah.
also did not drink or do drugs, and he actually wanted to show up and be part of selection. Nuts. Um, and the prisoners would say that they thought that she was deriving sexual pleasure from the violence around her, which is going to become a pretty big theme about Irma. It's like the
Yeah.
fact that she's like super horned up over everything she's seeing.
That's
So,
accurate.
7 months into her time at Ravenbrook, she was transferred into Poland to Auschwitz II, which is Birkenau. Her time at Birkenau started out rough. She was supposed to start out as a telephone operator, but apparently she did something that was punished, like a punishment. And so she ended up having to go on assignment overseeing prisoners who were also on punishment. So these were people who like were trying to escape or talk back. They were given like the worst, the worst. Like think of, like the people that would have to clean out the latrines. And your job is you have to supervise them. So nobody wanted that punishment.
What did she do? What could you do that gets you in trouble?
I don't know what she did, but given the nature of Nazis, it probably wasn't that bad.
Or like it was so bad that Nazis think it's bad.
I think they're just kind of strict on everything, aren't they? Like they're not like a nice people. I mean, I love Germans. I love Germans.
No, no, no.
Your
We know.
presses of
Everyone
beer, great,
knows.
but like
Yeah, yeah.
y'all are stern people. You don't take lightly to things not going the way you want them to go.
Yeah.
So
Chiller
this part of
now.
the story is the part that I also picture from Schindler's List, where do you remember Taylor, where like there was that scene where they're burning this giant pile of bodies, and this
Hmm.
one SS officer is like screaming and laughing, but also crying. You remember
Hmm.
this scene?
I think
Like
so.
it stuck out of my mind. Like I was like, that was like that's like it was a great scene capturing like somebody's sanity just leaving. Like, it's like you know
Yeah.
what you're doing is wrong, nothing is right, the world is upside down, but you can't do anything about it, and you're kind of a part of it. Like I think that that's where she's at in this, like where her psyche just broke, which I think
Hmm.
happens to anybody if you're exposed to so much crazy dark stuff.
Right.
This is why like I remember okay, so this doesn't sound bad, but like when I was like younger, like 18, 19, actually, we all did this. Remember when we were kids and we like go on rotten.com?
Oh, sure.
I don't think that's good for your brain.
No.
I don't think exposure to stuff like that does anything but create like these cracks and fissures in your psyche that like worse shit can get into.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So I think that's what was going on here. Her next assignment was in Camp C, which contained 30,000 women. And like I said, more than anybody else I heard about during Nazi Germany, Irma Grese had some strange connections between violence and sexuality, which I'm pretty sure is like kind of a rarity for women. She would engage in forced sexual conduct with male and female prisoners under her ward. The male ones were there, given that Camp C was a women's ward. They'd have men there as like prison commando units. Like these are like
Hmm.
people who are like they're like narcs basically. The female prisoners she would use in this capacity until she was bored with them sexually, and then send them to the gas chamber and move on to someone new.
Jesus.
Yeah, she was crazy. a Jewish doctor and prisoner in Irma's section of the camp named Gisela Pearl. She wrote a book called I Was a Doctor in Auschwitz. And in it, she would talk about how every now and then she'd have to operate on women that were beaten really badly by Irma, and she would have to do it without anesthesia, and that Irma would always be there nearby watching her do it. So she would take pleasure and moan at the screaming sounds the women were making during these operations.
Oh my God.
She also had affairs with other officers within the camp, including Joseph Mengele
Yeah.
and a guy named Joseph Kramer, which was an SS officer known as the Beast of Belsen. I lost count of how many people she either had consensual or non-consensual sex with. But it was a lot. It was like, and normally,
Yeah.
like, listen, workplace romances, they happen. It is a thing. This was like, you're in the middle of the Holocaust. You're at ground zero Holocaust. So like corpses burning next to you. Like,
Yeah. I mean,
how are you horned up right now? They're
I only
crazy.
laugh because like a workplace romance at like Dachau is different than at like Google.
It's true. It's true. Very, very different.
Like, yeah, no, it doesn't, it's not a sexy environment where you're like excited to be at work. Like, that's bad.
Also, it's like it's funny because that last guy, sh he broke up. People are so weird. The last guy, Joseph Kramer,
Hmm.
that officer, he broke up with her because he found out that she was having sexual relations with women. Because he was homophobic and it's just like
Right.
it's like okay, I
Of
guess that
course they were
makes
also homophobic,
sense.
but like that's,
I know,
but then like
but,
why was she doing that? Like that doesn't make sense either. But I'm sure there was plenty of like of all sorts of gender on gender rape in these places, you
of
know?
course, of course. I guess you're right. I guess I didn't think about that. The way I was thinking about it was more like, wait, so you have like some sort of moral distinctions between right and wrong, which I guess, yeah, I guess they do.
Yeah, I guess they do.
So after this, she was transferred briefly to Bergen-Belsen, and she only stayed there for about 4 weeks because pretty soon after she arrived, British forces liberated the camp. And Irma was apparently defiant till the very end. She tried attacking British soldiers, and she had to be forcibly restrained. Actually, I didn't mention this, but like that woman I mentioned earlier, the doctor, Gisela Pearl,
Hmm.
she would talk about how stunningly beautiful Irma was. And you look at her pictures, and like she looks like Winston Churchill if Winston Churchill had long blonde hair.
I think I'm looking at her pictures. I feel like part of it is this like skirt that she's wearing that goes up to her boobs. Like that's not giving her showing her any favors. Um, but yeah.
Her face is like it's so sour.
I mean, her face when she's in this, I look like she's clearly on like trial. She doesn't look remorseful.
She's very yeah. But she described at length her angelic beauty and long blonde hair and beautiful blue eyes. I was like, she looks like shit, but I guess sure. Also, beauty standards were different, so there's that.
Yeah, I don't think she's ugly. I think that, yeah, I think it's the outfit.
I think her personality makes her ugly, if I'm being
Her
honest.
personality absolutely makes her ugly. Yes. Yes, correct.
Um, so the camps are liberated. She would ultimately get arrested and interrogated while incarcerated. And her argument was that Heinrich Himmler, who is widely considered the architect of the Holocaust, he is the responsible party and that she was just following orders. And I'm just following orders. That was basically the argument for any Nazi
Yeah.
war criminal. And it wouldn't work because it's long been established that taking orders that are patently illegal or following them when they're patently illegal is not a legal defense. So, on that basis, she was found guilty of committing crimes against humanity and sentenced to death. One thing I learned
No,
is
keep going.
one thing I learned is that in these cases, the tribunal preemptively rejected any appeals for clemency. Like their appeals were over. It was like, nope, you're guilty. This is it. Like there's no further appeals past this.
Yeah.
About a month after the conviction, sorry, about a month after the conviction, and after the trial of some other guards had wrapped up, and they too were sentenced to death, they transferred Irma and these prisoners to their last prison before execution. Irma and the two other women she was going to be executed with, they spent their last night hanging out, singing songs, and telling jokes. The next
Ew.
morning at 9:34 a.m., the first woman was hanged. Then half an hour later, Irma was hanged with her final words being Schnell. Do you know what that means?
Fast.
I said, yeah. Well, yeah. I
Like
said
faster.
I wrote quick, but like yeah,
Yeah.
same thing. She apparently went to her fate pretty stoically. Like she was not remorseful. She didn't seem scared. Because the last woman, apparently when she went, she was like losing her shit and was like terrified. And she was like a 45-year-old woman, just like scared shitless. And I remember at
Hmm.
22 was like, yeah, it's fine. But again, I think your brain's broke at some point. Like you
I think
don't
so too.
understand anything about what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, and that's her. That's the story of Irma Grese, and she was the most horned up guard at Ravensbrook, Birkenau, and Belsen.
Man, what a monster.
Yeah. Um, but the psychology of it is kind of interesting. I've actually never, until we had this conversation, been like, oh yeah, you know what? When you stack this and this and this and this and this and this, it's like, oh yeah, okay, people break. Like people turn into monsters.
Yeah.
And that's uh probably a
But
natural.
also, I feel like she was never going to be like, it's like some people could have been normal. It doesn't sound like she could have been. Like
So
she enjoyed it to a degree that I think was like
yeah,
unique.
she it's something also in the Mengele episode in last podcast they say, which was like there's some people that like they wouldn't they were made to be the perfect Nazi. Like they were brought up in a time period where like their unique skill sets and interests completely
Hmm.
dovetailed in the Nazi ideology, and she
Right.
probably falls in line with one of those. And actually, there's another story I didn't bring up, and I didn't actually write down here either, which is like the fight that she gets into with her dad that comes out during her trial, where her sisters are providing testimony, where Irma goes home in her Nazi outfit
Hmm.
at some point during her employment at Ravensbrook, and her dad's like pissed, and he's like, "Get like this isn't who we are. Like get out of my
Hmm.
house." Like they get into a fight. Like it's like a pretty violent fight apparently, and the only
Hmm.
time that she showed emotion during her trial was when her sister was retelling this story about how her dad was like, "This is disgusting. I don't want any of this around me," and like kicked her out of the house. Which is
Yeah.
like kind of cool of him because I'm pretty sure she could have gone to somebody and like reported him and had him
Oh,
shot in the head.
absolutely. Right. Because also she's young. So she's at that age where they're like, the government's like, you should tell on your parents
Yeah,
if they have any leanings towards not Nazism, you should um, make sure that you tell
rat on
us.
him. Yeah.
So she probably, she was definitely like one of the generation that was set up to do that for sure.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is another point for the dad, which is like, yeah, he probably had a Nazi card, but wasn't like into it, you know?
Yeah. He did maybe because he just had to. I mean, it doesn't sound like he was like a great dad, but like
I
still.
mean,
But like you
yeah,
said, the PTSD, and like the everything.
yeah, I think like that's like a big takeaway for me is like there's a lot of reasons why people are the way they are. God, what was I reading where it was like, dude, if Kanye West's mom was still alive, he'd never be the way he is.
That is 1,000% true.
Because like he loved his mom so much. He named like
Hmm.
his albums after her. And like I think her death like just completely ruptured something in his brain.
So interesting. But yeah, like
Anyways,
that trauma. Yeah, I don't think he was to therapy. He should though.
I guess like the point is like we can be empathetic and understand that we don't have the perspectives that other people have in
Right.
life.
Not as an excuse, but as like a trying to understand it.
But also, there's a category where it's like you're all. There's also Irma
Yeah.
Bresses that are not that like they're nuts. Like it's like
Right. Like she would have been like,
she would have been this way anyways.
yes, like she would have been like a terrible mother who abused the shit out of her children at the
Yeah,
least.
yeah.
Like they, yes, yes,
She would have been Rosemary West.
yes. She wasn't going to be like a good person
No, she was
because she
never
took
going to
to it
take
so
her kids to cookies and in front of
no,
storefronts.
she was
Like
not going to
never
coach
that.
softball. No,
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 no. So that's my story. That's part two of three women who are crazy. And my one next week is going to be a long one. You know who it is already, so I'm not going to restate it, but
I'm
it's going to
excited.
be a very popular one that is US based, which is going to be exciting.
Cool,
Yeah,
excited.
sweet. Anything we want to read out?
Yes, I have tons of mail. I have a little bit of mail. I mailed out two more stickers, which is super, super exciting. Um, I also got three people who agreed with me on the dog situation. Um, and we're not here to argue. I'm just here to say that some people just don't want dogs. And thank you, Ben, Justin, and Nadine, for writing in and letting me know that I'm not alone.
But did anybody say they want dogs?
No,
So we're the silent majority.
you're the very loud majority. That's 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 what that is.
Fair. I'll take it. You're not wrong.
Yeah, so thank you everyone. Thank you for emailing us, and hopefully you got the stickers I sent out. If you don't get them, let me know. But I did see them go directly to our mail lady, so they should get to you soon. And yeah, thanks everybody. We're at doomtofailpod@gmail.com and doomed to fail pod on all social media. And just Google Doomed to Fail podcast and you'll find us. That's what I've been telling people to do on TikTok because it's like some people don't know how to find podcasts. And if everybody listening to this obviously has already found it. But if you have a friend and they're like, I haven't found it, just Doomed to Fail podcast will come up on the top. I checked it on my browsers. Should work.
Sweet. Cool. Is there anything else, Taylor?
That is it. Thank you. Thank you, Farz.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day. Bye all.